Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about a happy life versus a meaningful life and the differences in how people kind of frame these things and which ones help your mental health more than others. And before we get to that, I will tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was, who even remembers, but there was the one on oral sex on women and loads of other ones. I mean, it is 25% more stuff that you get if you subscribe, so it's smart to do. And the next, I have really good ones. If you've always been a goofball, here's why your marriage will be frustrating in later years. Love languages are not based on research, and when people say stupid stuff like that, don't take tracking your wife's ovulation to some dystopian novel level, and like so many others. All right, anyway, so a lot of people try to pursue happipness, and they fail. Why do they fail? Because happiness basically is just a dopamine rush, Happiness is transient. It's fleeting. It's very self-oriented. And it's about, like, what can I do that makes me feel good right now? That's why all these speaking of dystopian novels, that's why so many of them had, like, happy pills, right? Like Soma in Brave New World. You want to feel happy. And as anybody who's ever tried an antidepressant knows, you could feel happy without having any reason, And as women know, like, at different parts of your cycle, you feel happy or sad. It's kind of like really independent of what you do, and if you are somebody, let's say, who responds really well to exercise, then you get a dopamine rush and then you feel good because you exercise, you feel happy. But did you really kind of change anything in any sort of meaningful way? Maybe with exercise, you feel like you've accomplished something, or you're also going to be healthy or what have you. But at different points in your cycle, you didn't accomplish anything besides just, being at a different point in your cycle. So happiness is transient, it's fleeting, it's really, really hard to get a handle on it or how to replicate it. How about meaning making, though? When you try to make meaning in your life, you try to have kind of a reason for being alive. That you could do no matter how you feel. So acceptance and commitment therapy, and I talked about this a little bit in my prior podcast, talks about almost taking a feeling and putting it in your pocket and kind of going along your day with it there, even if it's like depression. So you have depression. So you got to accept that you have depression. Certainly you hope that you won't. Certainly you could try, to engage in whatever treatment so as you don't. But as so many of us with treatment-resistant depression know, you may never be able to cure your depression fully, and it may always come back. And of course, every medication may have, they have side effects, no free lunch, as I always say. Some people cure their depression, many people don't. And many people do transiently, and then it comes back. So what are you going to do? Are you going to do nothing with your life? Obviously not. You don't want to do nothing. So the idea is that you can have a frame where depression or chronic pain or anxiety or what have you, you put it in your pocket and you go about your day. Are you going to go about your day with the same attitude as if you were not depressed? No, obviously, but you can still go about your day. So the idea is an acceptance and commitment therapy, and, it's not like you got to go really look for a practitioner who does that. I mean, you could if you want. Younger people do stuff like that. But because, you get this idea that like one practice of psychotherapy is going to be like superior. It's not. Like, the principles of acceptance should be present in all therapy provided by a skilled, experienced practitioner, and the idea is there are things you just cannot change, but what are you going to do anyway? You're going to commit. It's acceptance and commitment therapy. You could read about it if you'd like. There's a book by Stephen Hayes. We studied a lot of this in grad school. That's when it was like getting big, when I was in grad school. But point is that you commit to living a valued life, even though accepting that you have whatever issues you're going to have, kind of. And this is really, just another way to talk about maturity and to talk about gaining wisdom that you cannot change. That's even the part of in AA, right? Give me this, or there's like the Lord's Prayer. I'm going to mess this up, obviously, but isn't it the wisdom to know? Hold on. The serenity prayer. That's what it is. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I had to do a quick Google. So as people get older, they get more mature, they start to realize that they have to accept various things in order to go on with their life. They can't always be in a state of trying to constantly change everything. And that's what therapy can help with. Because if you're not happy, if you've never been happy, if you have core unresolved childhood wounds, then it's hard to accept that everything isn't going to ever be 100% perfect, because you feel like you missed out on so much that you want everything to be perfect now. It's kind of like there's a little analogy with the late bloomers, right? Like they feel like they missed so much sex and intimacy early in life, so then it's never going to be enough now. And I talk about that a lot. So what is the difference, obviously, between chasing happiness and chasing creating meaning or joy? Because as I mentioned briefly in the other podcast, I was reading this book by, it's called The Second Mountain, and it's by David Brooks. And he's talking about the difference really between happiness and joy. And joy can be elusive as well, which is why I didn't say that the difference, that the difference between happiness and joy. Because like if you're depressed, for example, it's hard to feel moments of joy, but you can always feel meaning. You can try to see meaning in what you're doing. But he talks about that happiness is very self-oriented and joy is kind of in serving your community and giving to others. And that is certainly tracks with how people kind of want to give back to their communities at a certain point. And there's studies that show that you actually feel happier if you donate to others than keeping money yourself. So when they do studies, they give like $10 to somebody and say, you could either do this, you could either spend this on yourself right now, or you could spend it on somebody else. And the people who spend it on somebody else are happier, which makes sense to anybody who's been a parent, right? I mean, I barely buy anything for myself, right? It's mostly for the children, because that makes you feel happy to see that they're happy and what have you. So if you cannot chase only happiness, then you have to look for kind of the deeper purpose of your life. This is something that people struggle with mightily at midlife, and a lot of people come into therapy to discuss these deeper issues of meaning making. What is your legacy going to be? What every day can you do something meaningful in various domains? How we were trained when I was young, when I was in graduate school with acceptance and commitment therapy, was to actually write it out with people. So there's these different areas of your life. So parenting and health and mental health and work and family, right? And so then you would say, what are your values in this area? And then the values would be, let's say, to be a good mother. Okay, well, what does that mean? Oh, to be a loving mother, or to be generous, or to be kind, or whatever. And so you could create little things to do every day that are in line with your values. Whereas your goals, when you achieve a goal, you're happy, but very fleetingly, because it's over. Like if you run a marathon, then you've run a marathon, and you're just thinking about the next marathon pretty much almost as soon as you're done. But if your goal is to lead a physically fit life, if your value is to lead a physically fit life, that's ongoing. That isn't a discrete goal that can be achieved and then you move on, right? So it's always there. So if your goal is to be a loving mother or a loving father, then you can always do something any time of the day, even if your kids are asleep. If your kids are asleep, you could write them, a little email that they're going to see in the morning. Or if your kids aren't in the house, you could plan the next time that you're going to see them. Or you could just text them something. Or if they're at sleepaway camp, you could still be a good mother by getting your own relaxation so you're ready to go and do a lot of fun stuff when they come back. Whereas like goals are kind of more discrete, a value, you can kind of get a million little things to do based on an ongoing value. So it's an interesting way to think about things. And as people get older, they really, really move over from the search for happiness to the search for meaning. There can be a lot of problems and incompatibilities when one person is trying to lead a more meaningful life and the other person is just trying to lead a happy life. So, for example, a man is thinking about how he can transition into a different career because now he's made his money, and so he's on his, what David Brooks calls his second mountain. That book, if you're interested, again, is The Second Mountain by David Brooks. But he wants to now give back. He wants to be an inner city teacher, and he wants to work with these kids that are struggling, right? Or maybe he wants to become a philanthropist or whatever. But let's say his wife just wants to travel. And that's all she ever wanted to do. And that's what she thought they were going to do at this stage of their life. And that makes her happy. And she likes to travel to nice places and stay at nice hotels. Well, they frequently have kind of a difference of opinion there. And it's a deep difference of opinion because he's trying to make meaning in his life and she's not in the way that he is. Maybe she is in her own way. Couples therapy could suss that out. But there are very kind of obvious differences in people who go after happiness and people who go after meaning. Most commonly, so I have my post and podcast, The Annoyingly Satisfied Husband and the Wife Who Wants More. There's a lot of women that I see who get to midlife and they want more out of their lives. They feel like their life is kind of meaningless. It's just like one the same day every day, and you just parent and work and come home and parent and work and come home, and they try to get more involved in something spiritual or something community-based or volunteer work or politics, and they feel that the man is just coming home and sitting on the couch or coming home and go to the gym, and that's it. Nothing really where he's thinking about the world, like the larger world. It's based on kind of him and his temporary happiness, trying to get to a temporarily happy state. And this happens with substance use too, right? So one partner will stop drinking and the other person has drinks like every night, and they're just trying to get to a buzzed state. There's no obviously deeper reason for drinking, or deeper reason for any addictive behavior. It's an addictive behavior. So interestingly, some of the people that come in are really, really kind of struggling with finding deeper meaning in their life. And when you talk to them, they're drinking all the time, or they're gaming all the time, or they're jerking off all the time. And there's an addictive, or they're shopping all the time online. And so there's an underlying problem called an addiction that's stopping them because so much of their time, or even just they're scrolling through social media. So they're super addicted to something. So it's almost they're unable to find deeper meaning in their life because every moment that they have that's not accounted for by parenting or job is going into the addiction, but they don't perceive it as an addiction because they're still, quote, high functioning. So it is always very interesting if you do see a therapist, bring up things that you think may be addictive behaviors. Because if you don't talk about what you actually do in a day, then they're never going to know, and that's something important. So if you're if the whole night is about binge eating and that's reality, you think, okay, I'll go to therapy and I'll work on my binge eating. And then a lot of people never bring it up, as though if you worked on other things, somehow the therapist would magically know that you spend the entire night eating. They're not going to know unless you tell them, or they're not going to know that you drink every night, and that's a big one. A lot of people don't bring that one up. So addiction is the opposite of meaning making. It sucks meaning out of your life. It just sucks away your time and the only life that you have. And I have podcasts on binge eating and drinking and things like that. But anyway, if some of this resonated with you, particularly trying to create meaning versus happiness, if you're somebody that can create happiness and loves it, cool. I mean, then it may take more, or you may never decide to change over to a search for meaning in your life. Because you're one of those people who's just good at being happy, and that's great. And it's probably a lot of genetics with parents who are good at being happy too. And so cool, But most people listening are not those people because they're not interested in a psychologist then. They would be listening to a hobby podcast of some sort or just music or something. And and so if you're somebody who is trying to say, why am I so unhappy all the time? Well, maybe because you're not supposed to be trying to be happy. Most of us, remember, evolutionarily, we were supposed to survive as humans. And now survival is guaranteed for most people because there are so many fewer threats. And then what does the organism do? Like survival is like pretty big. That's pretty deep, meaning-making kind of reason to be alive. Also religion. Religion was super big in most people's lives. And again, at least to the people listening to this podcast, is probably not, because obviously I am secular. So people do not have that same thing. They don't go to church like, a few times a week and base everything around, what the pastor says and this and that. And they don't live near extended family. So being there for your aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and mom and dad and in-laws, that isn't the same way as it used to be either. So people are searching for meaning in the absence of the kind of setups that allowed for meaning between survival, religion, family, in all other times of our life. So it's kind of like we're really set up to fail here. So you have to go a little bit deeper and figure out what makes meaning to you individually. What is the legacy going to be of your life? And this is important stuff. And it's the stuff that a lot of people grapple with in individual therapy. And I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that it made you think. And I will talk to all you guys later. And remember, that book is The Second Mountain by David Brooks. It's an interesting book, and you could read it and think about what your second mountain is. And if you look up his individual story, it's pretty interesting too. He had a divorce and what have you. And then he, had all these different changes of hearts and remarried. All right. Well, I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.